So within Unity, levels are broken up by things called scenes, which are essentially just, they kind of boil down to what levels are, but they don't call them levels because you could be making 100 different kinds of games, and there's lots of games that don't use levels. You could be using making a huge open world RPG game, and you could have a scene for a certain area or village, and you could have a separate scene for another bit of the map and things like that. So you don't want to call them levels because that's a very specific term. We want to be more generic, so that's why they're called scenes. And by default, when you first start Unity, it opens you up into a new, brand new scene. But we want to be able to save this scene so that any changes we make will actually be saved next time we start the game. So what we're going to do, we obviously need somewhere to save these scenes. So we'll go back to our main assets folder, and we're going to right click, and we're going to create a new folder called scenes, which is where we're going to store all our levels. And then we're going to go up to file up here, and we're going to hit save scene. And then we go into our scenes folder, and we're going to call this level 1 and hit save. And if we go in there, we got level 1 here, and we can reload that anytime we want to. If we've got multiple different levels, all we do is double click on that and it'll load up. But obviously we've got nothing going on here, so there's nothing changing that we can tell. Okay, so now we need to actually start making some stuff to go into our world. So we're going to start out by making just a few bits of ground for our player to stand on as they're moving around. So what we're going to do is scroll down here. We could find some bits of grass. So we're going to use these tree sprites, which are the first kind of tree bits of ground with grass on the top of them. And we're going to make a few platforms with these guys. So we're going to drag the first one, because it has a round corners on the left hand side. We're going to grab this one that is square all the way around, and we're going to drag this one which has round corners on the right hand side. So as you can see, when we drag them into the scene, they're automatically added to our hierarchy because this is the active area of our game, and we're going to make these into platforms. So to make them into platforms, we're going to need to keep them all bundled together. We could just like move them beside each other. If we go to our move mode here, we could move them beside each other like this, and if they were lined up properly, and just call it a platform, but that's no good to us. We want to actually be able to use them nicely. So what we're going to do is, in our hierarchy, we're going to right click, and we're going to create empty. And all this is create an empty game object in the world. We can't see what it is. It's not actually doing anything for us, but that's okay. We're going to rename this to be platform, and we're going to call it 1x7 because this is going to have 7 pieces across. So we'll hit enter on that. And just over here, what we want to do is make sure when we're creating these kind of default platforms, we want to make sure that we're keeping them as simple as possible. So we're going to make sure the position of all of these parts of it are at 0, like that. Okay. So what we want to do next is grab the 3 of these. So just click on one, and we'll hold shift and select the others, and just drag them on top of our platform. And what that does is make them a child of the platform object that we just created. So what we can do is, if we go up to the platform here and we use our move tool, we can move it, and it'll move all 3 of them at the same time, which is perfect. That's what we wanted to do. So then we're just gonna undo that to make sure we go back to 0, 0. And then what we want to do is, we want to have the middle of our platform be in the exact middle of, the middle box of our platform be in the exact middle. So what we want to do is go to this one, which is our sprites 123, and on the position of this, we're going to hit 0, 0 on that. So now that goes exactly into the middle there. But we're making this a 1x7 platform, so we need 7 pieces, and we've only got 3 at the moment. So what we're going to do is just duplicate this piece here. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. We can right click and you go to duplicate here, or we use a keyboard shortcut, which is Control and D, which is a very handy one to remember. So we'll hit Control and D, and that creates an exact copy of it, and it creates it in exactly the same place. So we could drag it away off to the side here like this, and just, we could try and line it up by eye. We know that we should actually be on the y-axis of 0, and we know the size of the cube is one whole block, so we could actually just go to position 1 like that. But because we're working with blocks like we are, a very handy and very useful tool to remember to use is, if we just drag it away for a second, if you have the scene view active here and you hold V what it'll do is it'll kind of snap to the corners or to the middle. And if we take the top corner here and then click and drag, it'll snap to other corners of things. So we can move around, we can see where it can snap to other stuff. But if we pop it on there like that, it perfectly lines it up properly for us. So it goes exactly to 1 and 0, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. So we're going to duplicate this again, hold V and move it out to there. We're going to duplicate again, hold V and move it over to the other side. We actually should use the other corner. There we go. Duplicate it one more time, hold V, move it over to there. And then we've got 5 pieces there, so we're going to do the same with these end pieces now to line them up. So we've got this one on the side, we'll hold V, lock it into place like that, and we can see we're getting exact perfect numbers up here, which is what we want to happen. And then finally this guy, we'll pop him down there. Now you might notice, as I have here, that we've got some lines appearing between each platform. So for the moment, we're not going to worry about that. We will fix that in another part. But for now, just be aware that that's not actually a problem, and you don't need to try and fix that at the moment. You don't need to make them exactly overlap or anything like that. We will fix it, and it won't be a problem as we go forward. But for now, we'll just leave them like that. Okay, so we've got our platform here. So we've got a 1x7 platform. So let's make a couple of smaller platforms. So we're going to duplicate this whole platform now. So we'll hit Control and D like that. And we're going to move this new one up just a little bit. And if we drop it down, or actually, yeah, we'll drop it down, but if we click on the name again, we're going to rename this and get rid of the 7 and the extra 1, and we'll just make this a platform of 1x5. So now we've got 7 pieces in here when we only want 5. So we're going to have to get rid of a couple of pieces. So let's get rid of, say, this one here and this one here. And we're going to again do the same thing of lining them up. So we'll just move the little pieces, the end pieces, into the middle, and then we've got a 1x5 platform. Nice and handy like that. So we'll duplicate this one more time, and we're going to make a 1x3 platform. So we'll do the exact same thing. No, we want to move it up a little bit first, like this. There we go. And we'll do the same thing of just deleting a couple of outside blocks, and then we'll move the individual edges back into place. Okay, so we've got our little platforms here. The next thing we want to do is create some kind of bigger ground pieces. So we're going to right click here, go to create empty. Oh no, we were still highlighted on the sprite inside. We have to make sure that we're not actually, we don't have ending active. So if we have that little crossbar in the window here, we know that something is active in the world. So we don't actually want that. We want to make sure we're clicked off of everything, and try again. We go create empty, and this time we're going to call this one ground tree by 7, we'll call it. So as you can probably guess, this is going to be a tree high piece of ground. So again, because this is a new one, we're not just duplicating, we're going to actually select the 3 guys and move them over to the side here. And our ground, we're going to set him back to be the exact middle so that we know where everything is, like that. And then on our sprites, the one we're going to need for this one is we're going to need the same middle piece that we used before, and we'll drag that in there. But now we're going to scroll down a little bit further, and we will have, here it is, a block that has no top on it at all, and it's just completely square. And these are the 2 pieces we're going to use for our ground. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to take these 2 guys and make them a child of the ground main element. Then this, the kind of blank one, we're going to set him to be the exact middle, like that. And then the other one, we're going to use V to line it up again. So we'll go over here and line it up. Then our sprites one down here, we're going to duplicate that, and again we're going to move that down to there. And now we're going to quite simply, we're just going to copy that whole thing. Oh, we don't want the camera actually, no, so we'll use the hierarchy over here to select the 3 of these, and we're going to duplicate that, and we're going to hit V. We're going to hit V and drag it over to there, duplicate it again, hit V and drag it over, duplicate it again, drag it over, and then we'll go over to the other side. So we'll drag it over to there, duplicate it, drag it over, and one more time. So there we go, we've got a 3x7 piece, so now we've got a larger bit of ground for our player to walk on. And our ground pieces, of course, these guys will always be at the bottom of the screen down here, so we won't ever see the bottom of them, so that's why we're not too worried about having rounded corners and stuff like that. Okay, so we've got our 3x7. So now let's duplicate him. We'll just move it down to here. And we want to make this a 3x5 because we might as well stick with the same kind of pattern that we had. So what we need to do then, we need to chop off the ends. But now that we've got so many pieces here, it's kind of hard to keep track of which ends are which. So instead of using our thing here to kind of go around and trying to randomly guess which ones are the pieces we use, we'll just click and drag down here. And whatever pieces are completely covered in our box will be selected here. So we've got 3 end pieces on the right here that are completely covered in the box, but the 3 in the next row are only partially covered, so they won't be selected. So if we're going to select just those 3 boxes there like that, and we'll hit delete to get rid of them, do the same on the other side like that, and you know you selected the full box when the little arrow thing appears like that. We'll hit delete. Now we've got a 5 wide piece here. And then we're going to duplicate this one and finally create just a little 3x3 piece. So let's move this over to here. Do the exact same thing, like that, and like that. And then finally we'll create just a simple little 3x1 piece, just to add a little bit of challenge maybe later in our game. So again, we'll just chop off the 2 ends, like that. And there we go, we've got all our pieces laid out. But the only thing is, at the moment, these aren't actually anything physical in our world. These are just pieces of art that we've dropped into place. And within our world, they won't actually do anything for us. So what we're going to need to do is add our first component to our objects. So what we're going to do is we'll click on our first item in our hierarchy here, and we'll go over to Add Component, and what we could do is navigate through these menus to find the thing we're looking for, which is a Box Collider 2D, and they're actually located in our Physics 2D and in Box Collider 2D. But one of the handy things about Unity is we can start typing the name of the thing we want, and it'll give us some options. So we'll start typing box here, and we've got a few different things here, and what we want is our Box Collider 2D. So we're going to hit that there like that, and what that does is, if we scroll in here, it creates this little green box that this will act as a physical thing within our world. So this will be something that our player can stand on. But obviously you can see this is only taking up one little bit of this area. So we need to make that the whole width wide, and all we do is go to our X value here and hit 7. Because we know that this is our 7 wide block. So we've now got a whole big piece here that our player can stand on, and when we have our game running, we'll actually have something physical in our world. So we'll do the same thing with our other elements. So if we hit Add Component again, our box stays typed in there, so we can quite easily just go to Box Collider 2D again quickly and make the size 5. For the platform, we'll do the exact same thing, make the size 3. So obviously our grounds are going to be slightly different if we add the same component. Instead of, it'll still be 7 wide, but of course instead of being 1 high, we want to make it 3, like that. And this is the reason why we set our center block to be the exact middle. Because if, for example, I'm just going to do an example with this one here. I'm going to select all the pieces down below like this, and if we move them off center, we've now moved them away from the middle, but our middle point is still the exact same, and suddenly it's out here over to the side. So if we were to add our Box Collider now, our box is there. If we were to make the size 5 by 3 again, suddenly our box is all off to the side like this, and we would have to work out by using the offset here exactly the right amount to move it over and down to place it in the world, which obviously it's not an impossible thing to do. It's just an added step that we don't really want to have to deal with. So we'll get rid of that. I'll just do undo this, move everything back into place, and then we're going to add our component, and we'll have all the pieces we need. Do the same with these last 2 pieces, 3 by 3, and finally 3 high and 1 wide. So there you go. Now we've got a whole bunch of pieces that we're going to be able to use within our game, so that our player can actually interact and start doing stuff in our world. So next we need to understand a way to save these so that we'll be able to reuse them again and again in the future. So next time we're going to take a look at prefabs.